There was a small but really important photography exhibition in 2008 in London where a photographer showed a small body of work that became really influential. For a self-trained photographer, her career journey is incredibly inspiring. The work she showed really impacted music video, commercial photography, advertising photography in general, and heavily influenced some UK photographers who have gone on to become really famous. The photographer was Alex Prager. Her body of work was called The Big Valley. Her early imagery showcased themes that continue throughout her work. Alex remains relatively unknown or uncredited, despite being so impactful. Her immediately recognizable style took a lot of influence from Alfred Hitchcock and David Lynch, and from the beginning used a lot of wigs, heavy makeup. She had a super stylized, colorful aesthetic for the styling and focused on the idea of Americana, in particular the city of Los Angeles. Her lighting style was also immediately recognizable. She took the aesthetic of lighting for Technicolor movie sets and sound stages and brought it into her photography. The thing that's really interesting to me about her was she is not a trained photographer. She just had a desire to make work. Her initial shoots were really small, but incredibly well focused. In 2010, she came back to Michael Hoppen Gallery and showed another body of work. At the core of her work is always a strong female. She focuses on several key themes, cars in particular are a big part of that, often abandoned or crashed, crowd scenes, often shot on a soundstage, with that central female character staring at the lens. And a lot of these crowd scenes focus on over-the-top styling again, also the use of prosthetics, fake tan, over-the-top theatrical makeup. Changes the angle of view with a ground shot on a wide angle, really brings the audience, the viewer, into the frame. Another thing she focuses on is the idea of a dramatic moment, and it may be people falling, or it may be people jumping from buildings, but it's clearly rehearsed and staged. Her single images take the form of movie stills, sometimes with a character that runs through several images, or a body of work. One of the things I find really interesting is she talks a lot in interviews about being incredibly nervous about making the work, nervous about going onto set, going into sound stages, but having to push through that nervousness and make the work that she wants to make. She must have an incredible drive. I think her work should really be appreciated in person. The prints are amazing, the colors are incredible on them, and she prints really large scale. She also makes installations for her work and uses mannequin models, people on the floor, oversized sculpture. She took a direction into filmmaking or moving image very early on, but it's really remarkable now to see the scale of the work she makes and the number of people she's directing and the teams and the sets. I love watching the behind the scenes of her films, seeing the old school lighting that she uses, and just having the idea that this photographer who had this small exhibition in 2008 is now the central person in this huge film set. And the influence that she's had on culture is really huge. That style that she embraced and really created has become super important in commercial photography. So hopefully you'll check out her work and give her some of the credit that she's due. So let's look at the lighting of Nadia Lee Cohen and what she's doing with her narrative storytelling. Obviously, she has this really cinematic style and has talked before about her love of Alfred Hitchcock films. So I've got this clip from Vertigo, which really helps understand her lighting style. And they were lighting mainly from above, tries to pull the face forward by putting this extra light onto the face. The other thing that Hitchcock did really well was get separation between his subject and in the background, but also by pushing really strong, intense light into the subject, and also using really strong sense of playing colors off against each other, which is something that Nadia Lee Cohen does really well. Then the framing composition is really important, but you always know who you're meant to be looking at because the light is pulling them forward. And you can see in this close-up shot, the face is really coming forward, and she's using a hard, direct light to do that. So here's a good example of that with the Kim Kardashian shoot. Sometimes she'll use one key light, one main light going into the face, or sometimes she'll use two lights that are crossing, so they'll be almost crossing at like 45 degrees across the face. And you can see it here because there's a really clear X line under the chin, which is where the two shadows meet. And once we see it in one of her images, you'll see it over and over again. So there's an X line under the chin here, and we can tell, okay, there's two cross lights that are moving into the face. They're a top-down light. They're bringing out the cheekbones, they're emphasizing the skin and face structure. And again, with this one, we can see the X under the chin. So there's a heavy shadow under the chin, and we can see the light is coming from both sides to cause that. There's a hard line on the shadow, so we know, again, it's a hard light source. It's not soft. It's not pushing through like a trace frame or a silk. It's not. And if we look at the shadow that's caused by the wig, we can see, yeah, there's a really hard line, a hard edge to that hair shadow. And this Lana Del Rey shoot, again, it's the same principle. The light on the face is not as strong this time, and it's a little bit softer than in some of the other imagery. And we can see that when we really zoom into the face, we can see there's maybe a bounce board that's kind of lower down under the chin. And again, it's a similar principle with this. There's this light that's pushing into the body, but then there's also light on the face, again, a hard light that's pulling the face forward. The other thing that she does to bring separation between the subject and the rest of the background is introduce texture. It could be additional lighting, or it could be smoke or haze or mist. And we can see this really well with a close-up of this shot. And then we can see in the background one of the hard lights that's putting a clip light across the body of the subject. And here's a closer-up shot of one of the Lana images again. Same thing, so we're using the hazer or smoke machine to create that atmosphere and feeling, but also create more separation between the subject and the background. With the cover shot, the background again really underexposed, and then the front light we can see from the shadow of the cigarette and the jawline. There's that strong light that's pushing down into the face. Again, it's a focusing beam of light, but it's quite wide this time because you can see the fall off of the light through the body. It's kind of almost reaching the hands. And then a similar thing with this, we're back to that X under the chin again, so that cross lights. It's not soft, it's not diffused. We can see it's really reflective on the skin. And we can see this repeated again. So with the Rihanna shoot, there's a softer light that's going to the body, but then there's that main light which is bringing the face forward again. And that's repeated in this image and this image here. Idea of just bringing the face forward, having a clip light come from the background, but looks very cinematic. She tends to shoot with a lot of warm gels. Rihanna's shoot is maybe one of the few that has a cooler feel to it, but most of the time it's about a vivid, warm feeling and then really layering color. She's really captured that beautiful feel of classic Hollywood, not being afraid of shadow, not being afraid of mixing light sources together so you've got cross shadows, but making sure that you always know who she wants you to look at in the frame. If you really want to improve studio lighting skills, don't worry too much about what other photographers are doing, but just spend a lot of time watching as many movies and films as you can. You'll learn so much more by watching light and movement at the same time. It's more about the lighting effect you achieve rather than the modifier that you put onto your light. You don't have to have the best lights in studio photography to get really amazing effects, and film will give you a lot of inspiration.